Hi friends, in this session we are going to use Hibernate framework in a sample demo and understand how it works. Let's get started. Now you can see the steps which are involved in creating an Hibernate demo. Let us perform these steps one by one and understand the entire demo. So as you can see, the first step here, we have to create a Maven project. So here for this demo, I'm going to use Eclipse IDE. Let me get started. Let's start with File, New and a Maven project. Use default workspace location, click next, and let me create a quick start project, Maven archetype-quick start project. Click next, and let me leave the group ID as com.vinod, and I'll give the artifact ID or the application ID as Hibernate demo and the version 0.0.1 snapshot, and click finish. So let's take a look at the second step. Step 2 is add Hibernate dependencies and H2 database dependencies in pom.xml file. Let's add the dependency file. We can get the dependency file from Maven repository, which is available in internet. I've already taken the dependencies which we need, and we need 3 dependencies. One is Hibernate core, Hibernate validator, and the third one is for H2 database. Okay, I have picked the latest version of these dependencies which you can find in Maven repository in internet. So I can copy these dependencies and paste it inside the dependencies tag and save it. The next step is to create a database in H2 database server. So from where we can get the H2 database server, go to H2 website, type it in Google and download the same and install the same. Once you install it, you will be finding this H2 console. Open this in browser, and the default settings is as above. So I wanted to create a new database. You can type any database here to create a new one. Let me create a database called as Hibernate DB. So I'm creating a new database here, guys. Username is SA, and you can give a new password for the same. So let me give SA@123. You can click connect, and the connection is established, and we have created a new database where you can see no tables are available. So this is step 3. Next step is to add an important file in our project which will contain the configuration informations of Hibernate. So what we have to do is, now my project is ready to work with Hibernate because I've added the Hibernate dependencies, which has added all the required packages to work with Hibernate, as you can see under Maven dependencies. So with this, the next step what we are going to do is I'm going to create an Hibernate configuration file. Where do we have to create this file? You can create this file inside src/main/java. Select the project, right click the project, click new and choose file. Here you can give the name of the file you wanted to create. So let me choose hibernate.cfg.xml. So where I wanted to place this file, you can choose it. I wanted to place it inside src/main/java. Inside this folder I wanted to place it. Okay, click finish. So here the file is created, hibernate.cfg.xml, which is created inside src/main/java. In this file we will add set of properties which are Hibernate properties with some values. So these properties are predefined. Only the values will be given by user based on the project. I'm going to copy this and paste it in my file and then explain to you what it is. Let me explain this to you. So the first line is the XML version and the encoding, what kind of characters it supports. And then you have a session factory tag inside which we will be defining the Hibernate properties and values. So the first property, which is hbm2ddl.auto, is to indicate the data definition language what you wanted to perform on the project. So when I say create, it will create a table based on the entity classes. The second one is Hibernate dialect property, where the value is org.hibernate.dialect.h2 dialect. So when I say H2 dialect, Hibernate will write the queries which will be understood by H2 database. That's why we need this Hibernate.dialect, where the dialect is given as H2 dialect. In the case of Oracle, I'll give it as Oracle dialect. MySQL, I'll give it as MySQL dialect. So based on the underlying database, you will give the value related to it. Then you have the connection driver name. For H2 database, it is org.h2.driver. That's a driver class name which we need in order to establish the database connection. Then I have the connection URL. So in this connection URL, one small change is I need to change change my database name, which is Hibernate DB, and the username is SA and the password is SA@123. So show underscore SQL true, it indicates any query which is generated by Hibernate framework will be displayed to the user when I say show underscore SQL as true. Then the last property here is current session context class. So by default the value is thread. It indicates for every user there will be a separate session which will be created. So these are the properties which I have to define under Hibernate configuration file. Let's save this file. So what is the next step? The next step is to right click this src/main/java and create a new class. So I'll give the package name as model, and the name of the class I'm going to create here is product. So as you can see here, we have created an entity class called product. So this class is going to behave as an entity class, and this class will act as a table in database. So let me put an annotation here called as entity. So always remember, whenever we add these annotations, we have to import the package. Click this icon and import java_x.persistence. If I want this class to be given with a different table name, I can use an annotation called as @table and give the name of the table as product details. We have to create a no argument constructor inside this product class. So this is how a default entity class will look like. I'm going to add the properties of entity class now. So the first property which I'm going to need is an ID property. The second property I need is product name. The third property is product cost. So I've defined 3 properties here, and on top of each properties I will define the annotation to indicate the behavior of this property in the table. So here I will give an ID property which indicates it's a primary key field. Primary key means it will not allow duplicates. One more annotation called as generated value. Strategy equal to generation type dot identity, which indicates it's an ID field, and when I say generated value, the value of PID is going to be auto generated. I can also use one more annotation on top of it. If I want the column name to be different in the table, I can give it a column name equal to, I'll give it as product ID. So remember, only one field can be a primary key field. So once again I'll use column just to change the name of the column in the underlying table. Name equal to product name, name equal to product cost. Let me write a constructor now with those properties. You can right click inside this class, click source, and you can select this option, generate constructor using fields. You can see PID, PName and PCost. Please untick PID because PID is an auto generated column, and then click generate. So it generates the product constructor. By default you can see the keyword super inside it. You can remove it. After generating the constructor with these 2 arguments, PName and PCost, you can right click once again inside the class and then once again click source and generate setters and getters. Tick all 3 fields and click generate. So it will generate the setter method and getter method of all the fields defined. So we are done with the entity class now. What is the next step? The next step is to create database configuration class, which will help us to load the hibernate.cfg.xml and help us to create session object. Let me create the database configuration class inside the model package. Right click the model package, click new and select class. Let me give the name here as dbconfig. So I have a dbconfig class. Inside this class, let us declare few variables what we may need in order to perform the steps inside dbconfig class. So the first class we may need is configuration class. This class belongs to Hibernate framework. Then another class which I may need is session factory. The next class I need is session. So here all 3 classes are imported from org.hibernate package. I'm going to place a constructor here, and inside this constructor I have to create an object for configuration class. The next step is I have to call the configure method and load the configuration file, and the configure file name is hibernate.cfg.xml. After loading the configuration file, I have to add the entity class to this Hibernate configuration object. How to add it? By using add annotated class, and inside that I have to give the name of the class, product.class. After adding the class which I wanted to configure in Hibernate framework, I wanted to build a session factory where I can use build session factory. This will completely return a session factory object which I will put it inside SF. So what I'm doing in this step is, so in this place I'm loading the configuration file. Then To this configuration file, I'm adding an annotated class called as product.class. It's an entity class. Why it is annotated class? Because if you open product.java, you can see you have annotated it as an entity class. So you can pass that to the annotated class method, which is indicating that Hibernate framework will now understand that this is a class which it has to create as a table. That mapping is done here. And after that, I'm creating an object of session factory, because with the help of session factory is what I can create session objects for every user. Session factory is a heavy object which is created once for the entire application, and using session factory object for every user, I will be creating a session object, because when user once perform the transaction, his transaction has to be managed separately. When user 2 performs another transaction, his transaction has to be performed separately. So for each user, a separate session is required in order to manage the transaction separately. From where I can get these session objects with the help of session factory. So once we are done with this code, the next method I'm going to write is a get session method. Inside this, I'm going to use sf.getCurrentSession, and this will return session object. So here I will return session. Now we are done with Hibernate configuration class. Let me open the steps and let's take a look. So create a database config class which will help us to load the hibernate.cfg.xml. Yes, we have loaded it, and help us to create session objects. Yes, the get session method will help us to create session objects. The next step is to create a service class called as product DAO, where we will add methods to perform CRUD transactions on product class. So CRUD stands for create, retrieve, update, and delete. In this demo, we are going to understand how to create in the sense insert, how to insert a record into product class. That's what create means. Let us create the next class. Right click your model package, select new, once again a class, and give the name of the class as product DAO. Click finish. So inside this class, I'm going to write a method. The method name as insert product, and this method will take product as its argument. Above this, let me declare a constructor. Inside the constructor, I'm going to create an object of dbconfig. So let me declare the variables here what I need. We should put the entire code in try and catch block. Let me write the code for performing insert product operation. So first step here is I need a session object. So let me declare a session variable in the class level and import the package. So here I will say db.getSession. db is your dbconfig class. Using the object of dbconfig class, I'm calling the getSession method, which will return a session object for a user. When I say session, it means what? It means whenever one user tries to perform a transaction, whenever a user connects to this code, for him a separate copy of memory needs to be allocated until he completes his transaction and comes out of the application. So for every user, a separate session object gets created. So getSession will return session object. So I'm storing it inside the session variable here. The next step is to begin the transaction. So using sSession.begin_transaction. Begin transaction will help me to start the transaction. The next step is to perform the save operation, and which object I wanted to save? Product object. So save will perform insert operation in the table. The next step is to end the transaction. So session.getTransaction.commit. So how to end it? Once you commit the transaction, whatever changes you're making in the database gets completed. And if anything goes wrong, I can say session.getTransaction.rollback. If something goes wrong, I wanted to undo the changes. So commit will save the changes, rollback will undo the changes. So we are done with the insert product method. Now the last step, let us create a main class. If it is already existing in the project, let us use it. So let's check. Inside src/main/java, we can find a package called as com.vinod.hibernate-demo, which comes by default when we create this project. If you open this package, we have a class called as app.java. Open it. Yes, you can see a main function which is already available in this project. Let's delete this code. And here I'm going to create the product object and call the product DAO method to perform the transaction. So let me create an object for product, and to the constructor I can pass two values, product cost and product name and product cost. The first argument is product name. So let me pass the name as Google, and the product cost is, let me pass it as 30,000. ID I will not pass because ID is auto generated, and the constructor also takes only two arguments, a string and int. Let's check the product class. We have to make this change in all the places where you have product cost as string, because it is of int type. The next step is create an object of product DAO, then import the model package once again, insert product and pass PD to it. We are done with the code. Now let's run this code. Right click inside your class, inside your main function, select run as and choose Java application. Great, it says success. One important thing I wanted to quickly discuss here is, you can see the queries are displayed here. These queries we didn't write. These queries are written by Hibernate framework. I have mentioned show SQL as true. That's the reason I'm able to see the queries. Let's check the output. Open your H2 database and refresh your database engine and connect your database once again. Here we go. We have the table here called as product details. Click this product details and automatically the query comes. Click run and here we go. Product ID, product cost and product name. And look at the product ID here guys, 1. We did not give the value 1. It is automatically generated from our application and it is inserted to product ID field because of the annotation at generated value. If you look at this output closely, the table name is product details, it is not product, and the column names are product ID, product cost and product name. How did this change? Because in product entity class, we explicitly gave the name as product details to the entity class called product, and the column names we have explicitly given here. If we don't give the name, then it takes the attribute name as the column name. Hope everyone is clear with this demo. Please try this out guys and give feedback for the same. Thanks for watching the session.